Hey everybody, this is chapter 12, section 5. It's the end of the chapter. This is a pretty short section, but this concept right here is kind of big in Algebra 2. It's equations of circles, so I can write the equation for a specific kind of circle. The specific being the radius will be different. Also, I need to have a center of a circle at all times so I can, graph it basically. And so next year you'll get into, graphing parabolas and graphing ellipses, and those formulas are kind of based off of this. So it's really important that you get a good feel for this one. It is pretty quick. I don't think it's really that difficult, and we've kind of worked with something similar like this. If you remember the distance formula, we did that way back at the beginning of the year, and this is kind of related to that too. Okay, so a couple notes here up at the top. The standard equation for a circle is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay, and if you think about it, that's exactly what the distance formula was, except there was a square root symbol over that whole thing. Okay, a couple important things that you need to have for this. H and K is the center of the circle, so it's a point that represents the center of the circle. So because when you graph points, you need an x and a y value. But in this case, I'm going to use x and y values, but I need a specific x and y value. And so we had to do something different with that. So we're using h and k as letters just to represent x and y. So h is really the x value of the point that represents the center of the circle, and k is the y value that is the center of the circle. Okay, so we had to change it so you kind of really know, hey, this is an important point, and but I don't know, if you just give me some random x and y, is that the center or not? So using two different letters to represent something else. Okay, R stands for the radius, and we've been doing that for a while here in some of the last section chapters of the year, so I think we're pretty good with that. Okay, you'll notice that you're squaring everything up here at the top, so please make sure that you got that. So you're squaring here, you're squaring there, you're squaring this. That's the standard equation of a circle. Okay, just another note too, remember when you're plugging in values, you're really going to plug stuff in for h and k, because we have to give you the center of a circle to get you started. So we're usually going to give you that. So when you're plugging stuff in to this formula, remember, if it's a negative value and you're plugging it in for either h or k, a negative value, that's going to change these negative or minus signs into positives because you're putting in a negative value after that. So, those are just little places we make mistakes because we're not being careful. So we just want to make sure that we're doing that. Okay. All right. So we have in our first example, they're giving us the center of the circle. They're giving us the radius of the circle. And all they're asking us to do is go ahead and plug it in here. Now remember, this spot right here is h. This spot here is k. And the center of the circle is represented by hk. All right, so I think this is going to be pretty easy to do. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so h is -4. So when I plug that in, I'm going to just kind of do it so you remember or see what I was talking about earlier. Remember what to do. So my x value, which is at the center of the circle, is h. It's -4. I plug it in. It's going to look like that. My y value, or in this case k, is 0. So y, I'll plug it in just so you can see it. And then my radius, they told me here, is 7.1. So it's 7.1 squared. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to make some changes. I did it kind of the long way here, just so you can see what to do. Obviously, I talked about that earlier. I got to change the signs there, so I get x plus 4 squared. And y minus 0 is just y, so I'm just going to get y squared. And then 7.1 squared, I think, is somewhere around 50.2, I believe. I'm rounding that up a little bit, okay? All right, so there you go. Pretty easy, I think, just to plug stuff into a formula and be able to do that, right? So what I want you to do is go ahead and do these other two, do B and C on your own. I'll just give you a heads up. They're giving me a diameter there. So I don't use the diameter for this. I need a radius. So hopefully you understand what to do with that. Okay. So why don't you guys hit pause and go ahead and do that. And we'll come back and see what the solutions are. Okay. So here's a couple of these. I'm gonna go back and change this a little bit. I didn't look at my notes when I was doing this. That first one should be 50.4. Okay, so in B, go ahead and I plug stuff in. Over here I had to change the sign because I put in a negative value after it, and then the radius squared is 10 squared, so I got 100. All right. I had to change this to the radius is going to be 5. Okay. So my center was 0, 0. So my H and K were 0, 0. I plugged it in just so you could see it. Sometimes when I show this answer, how'd you get that? So I just want to show you how I got that. And with the radius being 5 now, it came out to be 25. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do this on a different page just so I can kind of use a graph to show you guys this a little bit easier, I hope. Okay. So on my problem here, they're telling me that I have a point 1, 2 that's on the circle, and the center of the circle is at 5, negative 1. Okay, so 5, negative 1 is going to be right here. And 1, 2 is on the circle. So my circle is going to look, something like this, right? And that, obviously went off the graph, but this point right here is on the circle. So if you guys understand that, if I draw that line, that's a radius, and I needed the radius to do this problem, okay? So what I'm going to use here is the distance formula. So if you guys remember, the distance formula was this. Okay. And in this case, I have HK down here, which is really an X and a Y, and I have an X and a Y value up here. That point was on the circle, so it was 1, 2. So I've got 2 X's and Y's, and I hope you see there is a relationship between the distance formula and this standard equation of a circle. Okay, so we go ahead and use these 2 points, 5, negative 1, and 1, 2. We're going to go ahead and plug that into the distance formula, and D really in this case is going to get us the radius, or R. Okay. So I'm going to let you guys do a little bit of math here, and I'm going to clean up my board a little bit. So why don't you hit pause, and 1, find the radius, and then they want me to write the equation using the radius you found, and I'm going to use this HK that I have to write the equation of the circle. Okay. So let me clean this up a little bit, and then we'll come back here. Okay. So over here on the graph, I plugged in up here. I plugged in my X's and my Y's into the distance formula. I use the center of the circle and the point that they told me that was on that circle, did all my math, and I got down to getting 5. Now, remember I told you that that 5 represents a radius out here from the center to that point. Okay, so I got my radius, so I need that to write the standard equation. They already gave me the center of the circle. So down here, I went ahead and plugged in the center of the circle. And you'll notice this became +1 because I put in a -1. I put in 5, the radius squared, which is really 25. So it's okay to write it like this, but you know, you'll probably see it like that too. Okay. So really all this formula is finding a specific formula to represent a specific circle. Okay. And then you're going to do other things with that later on when you get into algebra 2. Okay. All right. So we'll move down here to the next couple questions. Let's see if I can get rid of this guy. Okay, so here what they want you to do is to write the equation of the circle. They're giving you a specific point, and let's identify this point as the center. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So the center of this circle is 4, -2. That's my HK. All right, and I can count squares. I'll just kind of go straight up. From here, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to get a radius of 4. Okay, so just counting squares. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and write the standard equation of that circle. You got a radius, you have a center, should be pretty easy to do. And on this one over here, this one's a little bit tougher. I sometimes do this one differently. My center of the circle is going to be 0, 0. Okay, that's my H and my K. But you'll notice that each square is going by 3, and I need a radius. So I'm just going to go straight up again to this point. But I'm going to count by 3. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. So my radius is going to be 24. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and plug all those in and see what you get as an equation. Why don't you go ahead and hit pause and do that. Okay, on that first one, they gave me the center of the circle. It gave me we figured out the radius. We just counted squares. So we get x minus 4 plus y plus 2 squared, being careful with plugging stuff in, equals 4 squared, which is 16. Okay. Over here, we got a big, huge number here. And also, these ones, when the center of the circle is 0, sometimes it really throws kids off. So I wrote it all the way out on this one. X minus 0 is really x, so it's x squared. Y minus 0 is really y, so it's y squared. Okay. And 24 squared, I believe, is 576. I'm not looking at my notes right now. I apologize for that. If you want to check it, you can. Actually, I'll just do it right now. What the heck? Yeah, 576. Okay. So, pretty easy. You know, give you a picture, find some stuff, stick it in. Really shouldn't be that hard. Okay. Right down here at the bottom, they give you an equation of a circle in standard form, and they want you to go ahead and draw it. Okay, so a couple things you got to remember. Remember, this was H and K, and this was the radius squared. So I hope you kind of can think here, what am I supposed to do with that 9? If I just need the radius, but it was squared to get 9, what do I have to do? So think about that. Same thing over here. Hey, something looks like it's missing. So if you go back up to that previous question we just did, you might get a clue what the center of the circle would be. And then same thing with 36. I have to get a radius, but I squared a number to get 36. How do I go and use that to find the radius? Okay, so I'm going to let you kind of think this one out on your own a little bit, and then I'll put the solution up. So if you want to hit pause and give it a shot, and then I'll put it up. Okay, so back here, I identified my H, okay, and my K. But remember that this was supposed to be a negative sign. Why did it change? Well, that's because I put in a negative value behind it, okay? And then this didn't change, so that meant I put in a positive value. So here's the center of my circle. I took this 9. Now remember, to get 9, I had to square a number. So obviously to get 9 and some number squared had to have been 3. So I took the square root of 9 to get 3. And so now I just went 3 in each direction around the center of the circle, and I can kind of sketch in my circle. I wish I could sketch a little bit better. Okay. All right. If I look at example B, this is a something's missing there. So something. After the X gave me just X, it must have been 0. And then the same thing with Y. So my center of the circle should have been at 0, 0. And once again, I had to take the square root of 36 to get a radius. Okay, and then I can go ahead and count. I just counted 6 in each direction. Hopefully I did that right. And I can just kind of sketch my circle around the center. Okay, and there you go. All right. One last thing I'd like to kind of leave you with here. This was the standard form of a circle. So this is what we got at the very beginning today, okay? And then sometimes I want to just get R by itself. Well, how would I do that? Well, hopefully we remember, if you've got something squared and you want it by itself, take the square root of it. But that means I have to take the square root of everything, okay, or both sides. So sometimes you will see this formula written like this, okay, and if you'll kind of humor me here, I think you'll understand this looks like that distance formula that I was talking to you about earlier, okay. So remember, H and K is really X and Y, so it is the same thing as a distance formula when you take the square root of both sides, okay? Remember, that's helping you get the radius. All right, so that was end of chapter 12. You will get this form of this kind of equation, doing this kind of stuff with different things when you get to Algebra 2, okay? Thanks a lot.